Assalamualaikum and hi to my supervisor Dr. Nabil Hassan bin Al-Kumaim, and my panel is Dr. Kamarudin. My name is Muhammad Akmal bin Mahbob, and today I want to present about my final year project. The title I choose for this final year project is The Impact of Social Media Share Content on Protective Behavior Against COVID-19 Among Customers in Malaysia. For the first slide is background of study. Coronavirus disease 2019, or we call as COVID-19, was first identified in China, Wuhan province in early December to become a global pandemic worldwide. Social media provide immediate disease-related information to share information between people in real time during COVID-19 pandemic. Studies have shown that the association between social media access, risk perception at the personal level, and protective behavior is resolved by fear and frustration. Famous social media outlets such as Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook have contributed to educating people during the COVID-19 pandemic about steps to prevent misinformation. Next is the problem statement. First, social media is now a place to disseminate misinformation and fake news rapidly. Second, many rumors and fake news reports are circulating about COVID-19. According to recent studies, fake news is becoming more difficult to discern from steroids whose credibility should not be challenged. And third is false information on health problems has been found to pose a probable danger to public health. The reasons for disclosing such false information have, however, been less well known. Next is the research question. First is, what is the impact of social media share content on protective behavior against COVID-19 among customers in Malaysia? Second question, what are the customer perspective about social media share content on protective behavior during this COVID-19 pandemic? And third question is, what the factor affecting customer protective behavior when they use social media share content during COVID-19 pandemic? And for the research objective is to identify the impact of social media share content on protective behavior against COVID-19 among customers in Malaysia. Second objective, to analyze the customer perspective about social media share content on protective behavior during this COVID-19 pandemic. And third objective is to identify the factors affecting customer protective behavior when using social media share content during COVID-19 pandemic. The next slide is literature review. In literature review that has two items is dependent variables and independent variables. For the dependent variables is consumer protective behavior. The role of the media in influencing change consumer patterns of behavior and discretionary spending is increasingly important in our globalized world where technological advances have extended traditional domestic news stories to international audiences, such that the media has come to play a larger role in the promotion and intensification of consumer panic and anxiety. For the independent variables that have 6 independent variables, first is perceived severity. Perceived severity refers to a subjective assessment of the severity of a health problem and its potential consequences. Second, IV is perceived risk. Perceived risk involves people's subjective assessment of the probability that possible negative consequences or diseases might come up. The third IV is social media fake news. Fake news as a deliberately fabricated information that is circulated to misinform and deceive individuals into accepting lies or uncertain verifiable facts. Next IV is e-health literacy. It has been defined as the ability to seek, find, understand, and apprise health information from electronic sources and to apply the knowledge gained to addressing or solving health problems. Next IV is public awareness. The social media information have a wide effect on the individuals and groups that connect to the online world to seek information for families, friends, and the general public. The last IV is health expert participation. Clinicians and researchers need citizens to be engaged in respecting the mitigation and containment norms to adequately deal and reduce the virus spread. For the next slide is theoretical framework that have two items in theoretical framework is independent variable and dependent variable. That have 6 independent variable is perceived severity, perceived risk, social media fake news, e-health literacy, public awareness, and health expert participation. For the dependent variables is consumer protective behavior. The next slide is proposed hypothesis. For the first hypothesis, there is a significant relationship between perceived severity and consumer protective behavior. Second hypothesis is there is a significant relationship between perceived risk and consumer protective behavior. Third hypothesis is there is a significant relationship between social media fake news and consumer protective behavior. H4, there is a significant relationship between e-health literacy and consumer protective behavior. H5, there is a significant relationship between public awareness and consumer protective behavior. And the last hypothesis is there is a significant relationship between health expert participation and consumer protective behavior. The next slide is research methodology. For the research design that have exploratory research, explanatory research, and descriptive research. For the research methodology, this research is involving quantitative research design. For the data collection method, question A will be used to conduct this research. The question A could be in Google form and distribute to the respondent using Likert scale from 1 to 5. For the descriptive statistics, Smart PLS is used to analyze quantitative data in this study. There are 3 sections from this questionnaire such as demographic profile as the section A, factors affecting protective behavior against COVID-19 is section B, and consumer protective behavior is section C. For the structural equation modeling or SEM, we use the two structural equation modeling. First is measurement model and second is structural model. For the next slide is data analysis. We use the Smart PLS that have 2 items in variance-based structural equation model. First is measurement model. The measurement model is used for additional testing of all items that have been confirmed in confirmatory factor analysis to determine if all the confirmations of the buildings make a major total contribution to the proposed model of the present study. Second is structural model. The structural model or inner model will be used after the measurement model or outer models have been proven to be reliable and valid. There are 3 parameters that determine the hypothesis relationship between construct in the current studies. And these creations are first is coefficient of determination R2 or indigenous construct, and second effect size F squared, and lastly is patch coefficients. Okay, for the next slide is measurement model. This is my figure of the measurement model. For auto-loading indicator must more than 0.7 shows the items are significantly loaded on a construct. Okay, as we can see, the most value auto-loadings for perceived severity is 0.906. For the perceived risk is 0.859. For the social media fake news is 0.906. For the e-health literacy is 0.746. For the public awareness is 0.741. For the health expert participation is 0.851. And lastly, for the consumer protective behavior, the most value is 0.822. Okay, next is the average variance extracted, or we call as AVE. AVE must more than 0.5, showing a convergent validity for all the constructs. As we can see from the table 1, the most value of AVE is 0.701 and it is a perceived risk. For the table 2 is composite reliability. Construct reliability is must more than 0.7, does not violate the convergent validity of the structure. In the table we can see the most value of construct reliability is 0.9 to 1 and it is a perceived risk. Next is the table 3 for funnel lacquer criterion. The square root of the average variance extraction of each latent construct is more than the latent interconstruct correlation with other latent variables in the model. From this table, we can see the most value of funnel lacquer criterion is 0.837 and it is a perceived risk. Next is the table 4. Table 4 is about the cross loadings of the items. This is the value of the cross loading of the items. The indicators outer loading on the associated construct more than the loadings on other constructs. The tests have indicated that the discriminant validity for all the construct is in order. So this is a value of the cross loading of the items. Okay, the next slide is table 5. This is about discriminant validity. It's about heterotrait monotrait ratio. We call as HTMT. HTMT values is much less than 0.85 and its good discriminant validity is determined. The measurement items are valid and reliable, so hypothesis testing can be performed. From this table, we can see EHL, or we call as e-health literacy, and public awareness is PA, is more than HTML values is 0.85 and it's not good discriminant validity. For the next slide is a structural model. From the table 6, we can see it's about the coefficient of determination, or we call as R squared, of endogenous constructs. This is a value of R squared level. First is 0.7 is substantial, 0.5 is moderate, and 0.25 is weak. From this table, we can see the most of value R square level is 0.784 and it is consumer protective behavior, and the effect size is substantial. For the table 7 is about the results of effect size, or we call as F squared. This is a value of S squared size. First is 0.02 to 0.15 is small, 0.15 to 0.35 is moderate, and more than 0.35 is a large. From this table, we can see all of the effect size is low because the value of F squared is not more than 0.35. Okay, the next slide is about the structural model. This is a figure of structural model for T value. In table 7 is about the hypothesis testing. For the T value is much more than 1.96. From the table we can see that have 4 T value is more than 1.96. It is e-health literacy, health expert participation, perceived risk, and public awareness. For the P value is much less than 0.05. That have 4 P value is less than 0.05. It is e-health literacy, health expert participation, perceived risk, and public awareness. So it for the result is a positive relationship. For next table is the next table is about the hypothesis. For the H1, there is a significant relationship between e-health literacy and consumer protective behavior. For the result is accepted. For the H2, there is a significant relationship between health expert participation and consumer protective behavior. For the result is accepted. H3, there is a significant relationship between perceived risk and consumer protective behavior. For the result is accepted. For the H4, there is no significant relationship between perceived severity and consumer protective behavior, and the result is rejected. And H5, there is significant relationship between public awareness and consumer protective behavior, and the result is accepted. And lastly, for the H6, there is no significant relationship between social media fake news and consumer protective behavior, and the results is rejected. Okay, the last slide is about the discussion and conclusion. For the objective 1 is to identify the impact of social media share content on protective behavior against COVID-19 among customers in Malaysia. For this result, we can see that have 4 hypothesis is accepted and 2 hypothesis is rejected. And for the objective 2, to analyze the customer perspective about social media share content on protective behavior during this COVID-19 pandemic. Instagram emerged as the most popular social media platform, followed by Facebook. According to the results, more people are using social media, which results in a greater amount of health-related information becoming more readily available to them. And lastly is objective 3, to identify the factors affecting consumer protective behavior when using social media share content during COVID-19 pandemic. The factors of e-health literacy, health expert participation, perceived risk, and public awareness are most affecting factors consumer protective behavior when using social media share content during COVID-19. The other significant effects are followed by perceived severity and social media fake news. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.